Of all the bullying cases, 80% of bullying at work incidences of a woman are by another woman. The most traditional form with women is indirect, so we tend to play quite dirty. It's called slut shaming, actually. Sorry for your listeners. Don't do it. Don't opt out of going to networking events and just go to chick events. You are actually doing your career a disservice. Being in those environments which are male dominated, where I have got no right to be, and yet I was the only woman in the room, Betsy. It was awesome. This is all happening. It's prolific. Nobody really talks about it all that much. What is going on and what do we do about it?
We talk a lot about the boys club, and yes, the boys club is real. But I have said many times on this podcast, the bigger problem may be that women haven't built a supportive community. And while we love to say women supporting women, many women have experienced something very different. Being excluded, undermined, talked about, having their credibility questioned, watching another woman intentionally make their job or their life more difficult. And we usually don't talk about it. Partly because we don't want to reinforce the stereotype that women are jealous or dramatic or we can't work together, but staying quiet does not make the problem go away. My guest today, Vanessa Vershaw, is an organizational psychologist, leadership expert, and the author of The Sisterhood Paradox. Her research explores why women undermine other women, what real workplace bullying looks like, why these experiences can be so damaging, and what it will take to create a different kind of sisterhood. This conversation is honest at times, it's uncomfortable, and it's exactly the conversation we need to be having. Building a stronger community does not mean pretending women always support one another. It means being willing to talk honestly about why we sometimes don't and choosing to do better. Welcome to Loud and Lifted. Vanessa, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, Betsy. I've been so excited to get on your podcast and have this conversation about such an important topic.
Yes. And you, first of all, win the award of being the furthest away guest we've ever had on this podcast. You were literally around the globe. And despite the fact, everybody will know when you talk, right, where you're from, but despite the fact that you are around the globe from us, you have the same issues in Australia as we do in the United States. And so much that you have written a book about it. And I love this. This talks to my core of what our podcast is about. So you call it the Sisterhood Paradox. So let's get into it. What is the Sisterhood Paradox?
Yeah, so it's this notion, the paradox of female relationships, and specifically focusing at work, where, you know, the expectation is that because we're female, we're sisters, and we look after one another. You know, we help each other in the workplace, you know, because there are so few of us represented at the top and it's quite hard to get there. But no, there is this huge piece of work and research and statistics that actually showcase something very alarming, and that is that of all the bullying cases, 80% of bullying at work incidences of a woman are by another woman, not by a man. And so as an organizational psychologist and social scientist, I decided to go a little bit deeper into understanding what is going on in the world. It's not just in Australia and New Zealand, in America as well. What is going on and what do we do about it? And is it actually affecting our ability as a society to progress in terms of gender equality? So these are some of the questions I went out to answer through writing this book.
So when you started talking about this, were people surprised?
Absolutely. Well, okay. I think the first response was absolutely, because that was PC. But when I actually broke through the surface and said, really? You've never had an experience like this? 9 out of 10 of the women that I spoke to said, well, actually, let's meet one-on-one and I'll talk to you about it. And it was really, really powerful because I interviewed a lot of very powerful women. I mean, we had Australia's foreign minister in there, and if you read the book, some very high-profile women in Australia and indeed globally. And most of them, when they were in meeting with me, after about 20 minutes, were just absolute puddles. They broke down, showcasing the far-reaching impact of when women mistreat other women. It actually hurts us more, and so much so that many of these women are being treated for post-traumatic stress disorder as a result. So it's a huge impact.
Why do you think we're afraid to talk about it?
Oh, there are a few reasons. I mean, I think one, and the most obvious, is that, because we've got the huge gender equality abyss, let's just say, women who talk about this stuff are seen as creating an even bigger divide and not helping the sisterhood. That's kind of the one thing. The other thing is that there are some women who haven't been affected by it, and so therefore it must not happen. I call it the pink elephant, right? It didn't happen to me, therefore it's not happening. So that's the other thing. And I think the third thing is it can be a career delimiter, right? I mean, as a female, if you start talking about this in the workplace, it's not very kosher. We've got typically reporting into male leaders, and they just see us as involving in bitch slapping behaviour and complaining and being, oh, there's that woman, there she is being emotional. There's nothing to it. It's absolute rubbish. And in fact, that's not the case. It's actually quite prolific, happens frequently. And definitely Australia and New Zealand are leading the charge, not necessarily from a female at work bullying perspective, because we don't have enough stats to back that up. Actually, it's more in your country. The Institute of Bullying in the US has the stats on that. But we are definitely leading the charge in terms of bullying in the playground. And we've had quite a number of incidences in Australia where little girls have been bullied by other girls at school and leading to disastrous consequences. Yeah. And so I do believe, as a psychologist, if we look at cause and effect, it's starting early and it's being dragged into the workplace because we're not effectively neutralising it when it happens at a much younger age. And so it's just getting pulled in. And that's a very simplistic view. I mean, there are a few reasons why it happens. The other thing is when we go into organisational life, cultures are still dominated by men. And so, naturally, we're going to try and survive in cultures where we aren't the dominant species. And a lot of women that I've spoken to, some of them have ended up actually being the bullies without realising it, which is really interesting. Yes, it's not always obvious. Either the act of being bullied by a woman because it's indirect, and perhaps we'll get into that, or identifying that actually you're a bully.
Yes, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that. What does that look like? What does that bully aggressive behavior look like? Just in case, well, let's just level set, just so everybody understands what this actually translates to.
Yeah, so look, the most traditional form with women is indirect. So we tend to play quite dirty as women. We do. We play quite dirty. So some of the tactics are quite indirect. So they might be things like gaslighting a woman, or white-anting, or spreading rumours about promiscuity. That's a big one. It's called slut shaming, actually. Sorry for your listeners.
No, love it. I mean, I don't love it, but yes, call it what it is.
Yeah, it's called slut shaming, where we actually reduce the value of, or the valence, we say in psychology, of that woman in the workplace by saying she got the job because she slept with so-and-so.
Oh, that's funny. That was my post on Instagram last week, was about that. Somebody started a rumor that I became the CEO of my past company because I slept with the founder. And people literally were texting me. My friends are like, is this true? Did you just make this up? I'm like, no, I did not make this up. I would never make this up. But that was their way of trying to ruin my credibility within a company. So
absolutely. And we go low and we go dirty, right? And the other one is fat shaming. That's actually on the rise. So fat shaming is a big one in the workplace. But unfortunately, bullying tactics have become quite sophisticated as well. So with the advent of technology and cyber, of course, we've got trolling. We've now got mobbing. So mobbing is where a woman will recruit other members of her organization to go and target and bully an individual, another woman, but they're like Teflon, so they send other people to go and do the dirty work, and they walk away. And another one that happened recently, and I talked about it in my book. I was sitting at a golf course with a group of guys that I'd been working with, and one of them was telling me about the organisation that he works in, where the managing director asked his female office manager to recruit for a new PA for the firm. It was an engineering firm. It is an engineering firm. And he said, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to run it like a Hunger Games scenario, where you put the women through the most heinous trials and tribulations, where you try to break them, so that only the woman that survives gets the job.
What?
And yeah, no, it's all in my book. And the office manager, a female, did it.
Oh my gosh.
So I honestly, Betsy, I don't know what to do with that one.
Right.
But this is what's happening. And of course, the other issue is, and I'll probably get voted off the island, a lot of these women-led organisations that are, big in name and very high society and high propriety are often run by women who are taking other women down. And I've got countless examples, as I said, of very high-profile women here in Australia and beyond who won't join these organisations, even though they know it's career suicide, because you've got to be part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's run by these Miranda-type characters, think the devil wears Prada. So it is extremely common. And the other side to this is, as part of my research, I interviewed men and I asked them, what do you think about all of this? Very high up in organisations as well, because I tend to work with more men than women in my line of work. And there were a couple of responses. One was, oh, that's not really happening, is it? So that was just, honestly, don't get me started on that one. I just felt like clobbering them. And then the second one said, oh, I actually like it when that happens because...
Stop it.
Yeah. And particularly, I like it when they do that, because with all these women getting jobs that they don't really deserve to fit a quota, it means that I can actually get a Guernsey now, and they can't use the token female card. So when women fight and tear each other down, it's really good for my career. I say, see, wow. They shouldn't be in leadership roles. So, yeah. So, this is all happening. It's prolific. Nobody really talks about it all that much, although it has become a little more frequent. But part of the reason why I wrote the book is personal. Not only my own experiences being bullied for many, many years, and throughout my career, I was a very young executive, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But I had two of my clients take their own lives as a result of being bullied by other women. And when I found out that I was pregnant with a little girl, I just said, you know what, enough. I've got to write the guidebook for her to navigate this crazy world of work that we're in. And so I've dedicated the book to my daughter and to all our daughters to say, hey, I know you might not want to hear this, but should I go, here is my legacy, and this is what I want you to know. And in the book, it's full of how do you actually rise above it? How do you deal with it? How do you get through it? How do you recognize it even? Something that's this, this pink elephant that is so invisible because of the way it's played these days that often we don't even know it's happening. And if we do, we're discounted, And so that's why I wrote the book. But I will tell you a very inspiring experience. So as a result of writing the book, I was asked to speak at the World Women Foundation as part of the World Economic Forum in Davos in January in Switzerland. And I was asked to talk about represent Australia on advancing gender equality. And look, I was absolutely terrified because we're not doing well, right? So I was thinking, oh my Lord. Live streamed to millions around the world. We've got a full packed room, standing room only. I'm competing with Donald Trump and Zuckerberg. And there's little old me on the stage with all these diplomats. And I'm thinking, holy moly. I've got nothing good to say. How do I talk about this? And the moderator, who's a bit cheeky, Dr. Sandy Chong, decides that she's going to tell them I'm writing this book. I'm going to get voted off this stage. I'm going to get the boos and the hisses. And she says, as she's Dr. Sandy Chong is with the UN, she says, so Vanessa, she says, it's you, and you can actually look at this. I understand you're writing a book on women, female aggression at work. Do you want to tell us about that? And after I'd spoken to the crowd, and my knees are knocking, not really, but I was petrified.
Sure.
My best friend is in the front row going, oh my God, because she knew I hadn't prepared for it. My best friend, Sarah, going, oh my God. And what happened? They stood up and they just started clapping. And they said, finally, someone is talking about this. Thank you. It was just incredible. The lift, talk about the lift effect of women supporting women in the room. And there were men in there as well, some crazy dudes in there. But it was extraordinary, the response. And so I think at those levels, we understand, world leaders understand we need to be thinking about this. But, that's why what you're doing today is so important, Betsy, because you're raising the conversation and consciousness around those invisible threats, those silent, lesser known things that are happening that can actually affect our ability to thrive, for all of us to thrive, in life and at work. And that's the book is about allyship, actually. It's about what if we didn't do this and we actually tried something else. We tried collaboration over competition. We actually recognized that by behaving in this way, we're actually punching ourselves in the face. Don't you think? Like we're actually hurting ourselves. This is like some form of self-torture, and destruction, and we don't even realize it. So,
I agree with everything that you said. And especially, you're right, experiencing so much of that firsthand through my career, nobody talking about it, right? We get so fixated on the boys club, and that's what we want to blame is the men. And as I always say, the boys club exists. Great. Have at it. I'm glad that they support each other. The problem is that we as women don't have a club or community or anything where we're supportive. And that's the imbalance. And again, I have 2 teen daughters too. So that was part of my why of even talking about it. And now they're 18 and 15. They're very aware. They'll call people out and again, they're not perfect. I'm not claiming that, but they're just aware of the way girls at their ages treat each other or what they see on a TV show or, whatever. So it starts with being aware of this is happening and then having the opportunities to be able to fix it, support it, not do it to other people, right? Be aware of that. I guess, why does this happen when you research so much with women? Like, what's the cause or the drive of these behaviors?
I mean, there's a couple of things. The most simply put is that we are animals, right? And at the end of the day, when we're in cultures and environments where, there's a struggle for resources, there's limited resources, it's, survival of the fittest. Survival instinct kicks in sometimes without us even realizing, and does that mean, much like Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, talks about, well, this is just, bitch behavior. And if you look at his theory, it would suggest that we don't have a choice. Well, we're not animals. We're not chimps. We're not dogs. So I would suggest that the intelligence that we've been given from God or whoever, supreme creator, means that we can be smarter, we can be more clever, and we do have a choice. And so, but it starts with the awareness to making choices about how we're going to behave. Now, I'm going to put myself on the line and say, when I started researching this, and also through my own awful experiences, at school and then later in the workplace, have I had moments where I've been an absolute bitch? Absolutely. I'm not guilt-free. However, there is a difference between being a bitch and being a bully. This book is about bullying. So what is bullying and what is the difference? Because we tend to just throw around the word bullying, like garden variety. Bullying is not if some woman eye rolls you once. Bullying is if someone calls you a hoe bag once. That's not bullying, okay? Bullying is repeated attempts to take you down. So it's the intent to maim and destroy on a repetitious basis. It's not just once, it's not just twice, it's continuous and it's calculated. Much like, intent in any legal case for murder. Can you establish mens rea? Can you establish that there was intent to kill? It's the same thing with bullying. It's got to be repetitive. So I do think that we've got a problem with the term bullying. I think we've weaponized it in the workplace. I think it's overused. And so the power of it and really understanding what it is has been diluted. This book is really those women who try to take down other women. That's what I'm talking about, right?
That's a great distinction. Yeah, I love that. And you're right. I think we're all guilty of being a bitch at times. I certainly could raise my hand on that. Who isn't, right? But yeah, the intention and being malicious about taking someone down is very different. And you're right, here in the States, we have been throwing the word around bullying a lot. And a lot of times it's in school and, high school kids, it's the younger kids that then when people use it in a workplace, I think you get that eye roll, right? Like, oh, bullying, you're just being dramatic. Like it's just gotten this negative connotation, unfortunately. And it's so true. But I love that definition because it goes back to like, it's being intentional of trying to hurt someone and take someone down. And that's a great distinction.
Very much so. And it's interesting on that note, you talked about boys clubs and girls clubs or women's clubs. So a couple of things. One of the tactics for women who are bullies is social ostracism. So exclusion. Exclusion is one of the most powerful and well-used forms of bullying by women, which is, again, why it's so hard to see, because it could be using the dreaded BCC function on an email, which is political, right? That's bullying. That can be bullying, repeated, where you just don't include someone. They're left out of the loop continuously and intentionally. The other thing around boys and women's clubs is the problem that you've got is a couple of things. One, a lot of women's clubs have become actual hotbeds for bullying. So that's what we talked about before. The other issue we've got is that because a lot of women are so sick of these boys' clubs, they choose to go to these women-only things, which means we are not represented where we need to be.
Good point.
And I would say to any of your audience, don't do it. Don't opt out of going to networking events and just go to chick events. You are actually doing your career a disservice. You must go to both. One is for moral support. It's a different kind of support. The other is you must be visible. If you're an ambitious woman and you want to do well, you've got to be seen. You've got to be at these things. I find with my line of work, I do some crazy stuff. I really push myself out there. So I will go to events where I know no women will be. The most random, like last week I went to innovation in shark nets, swimming in the ocean. And I met all these crazy male innovators about shark net technology. Know nothing about it. But you know what? For me, it's part of building those skills as well. Being in those environments which are male dominated, where I have got no right to be, and yet I was the only woman in the room, Betsy. It was awesome. All of the guys coming after me, talking to me, trying to make me feel welcome. I'm working with this institute, this Oceans Place, as a result. Absolutely fantastic. So we have to take a few risks.
Sure.
And that means not just going back to the chicks, because that's not going to help us either. We can't go the other way. We have to be in both places. And that's a really important. But make sure if we are going to the chick events or the women's only things, that the sisters that are running those events actually stand for what you believe in, and they're not part of that, the other side, because they will take you down. Make no mistake about it. And I see it all the time.
And you're so right. Those are the worst ones, because on the surface, you think they are women supporting women and they're there and this is a group. And I mean, I've been part of them, right? And all this, it's our tribe and we're so supportive. And all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, what just happened? Like the bottom just falls out because you are excluded, you're bullied, and you're like, shit, I thought this was a tribe, right? Like what's going on? And it's some of those women or those groups that do, they surprise you that they have this front, that they're, this great supportive group. So if a woman's listening to this and they're like, oh shit, I am definitely being bullied, whether it's at work or in one of these groups, like how do we handle this when it's happening to us? It's so hard, right? When we're so caught up in it.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of different steps. The first thing I'd say is, are you actually being bullied? Like what is going on? And I think that would be the first place I would go, is try to understand, like, what is this bullying situation that I'm having? And I'd go and seek counsel on that, to just either speak to somebody who you can trust that's quite well versed in these things, or you could go and see even somebody in HR if you trust them, to find out whether it really is that kind of a scenario, because I think that's the first thing. And then really it depends on who it is as well. If it's a superior, it's going to be very hard to address. Okay. And if the culture of your organization doesn't support action around these things, I'm going to be honest with you, there's not really that much you can do. You kind of have to go. You got to move out. And what I'd say is, you've got to move out before your confidence is so low that you actually leave the organization in a puddle and you don't have strength to fight or look for another opportunity. The problem, we women, is we soldier on. And we stay and we say, it's not that bad. We minimize it. I've been through worse. I've got this. The stats also show something interesting globally, that women don't tend to use the EAP service, the Employment Assistance Program. They don't seek out support at work at all because they're worried about how it looks. So we don't get help either. So you can see where I'm going with, if something's really going on, you need to get support before it ruins your prospects for the next role, because that's what we tend to do. And I will often meet up with women. I'll end up coaching them, and they're absolute post-traumatic stress situation, and they're just a shadow of their former selves. How can I possibly coach them to go back out in the world when they're like that? It's going to take me 6 months. So don't let it get there.
Yeah.
Figure out what you're dealing with, get some advice, get some legal counsel if you need to, and then make a decision. If you are dreading going to work every day and it's been going on for a while, then it's probably time to rethink whether you want to be part of that organization or not, and whether there are other prospects. Now, I understand what I'm saying. For some women, that's really tricky too, because jobs are hard to find, finding the right job. But at least you've got to start preparing for that next one. And that's what I always say. Start looking, get on the horse, and really reframe the work experience that you're having as, I'm just here until I find my next one. I'm actively seeking help. I'm making it work for me for now. And I know this person's doing what they're doing, but I'm just going to deal with it until I get out. But have an exit strategy is what I would say. Have an exit strategy. The other thing, of course, is if you can speak to the person, then that would be the best situation. But you have to determine whether that person's safe or not. Because, again, if they're in a power position and it's a bully in a power position, you're going to end up probably being the one that takes it. That's the reality. Because, and here's another thing, real female bullies usually have some form of psychopathology.
Give us a little bit more about that.
So you may have heard of like narcissism, things like this, bipolar personality disorders, all histrionic personality disorders, sociopathology, all these different beautiful minglings of ingredients that create someone whose neurochemistry is off. And that's typically what we see. A very high proportion of true female bullies are actually unwell.
That unfortunately makes sense.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to try and reason with someone like that? Would you reason with Dexter? No. Do you know? I mean, But we do, Betsy. As women,
Right.
we say, oh, no, she's not that bad. She's just having a bad day. Well, you know what? Have you documented what's happened? Have you figured out whether you're being bullied? Have you actually written all the things that have happened? Have you built a bit of a case to figure out what's happening? Have you gone and got some external advice to figure out the true nature or extent of this scenario? Because you do need an objective viewpoint. And on the basis of all that homework, do you still want to be there?
Right.
Can you really turn around Dexter? Probably not. Probably not.
And you're right. And that's the harsh reality is it's not going to change. And a lot of times this is happening from women in leadership to someone at a lower position. And that's an uphill battle that you're going to be having to prove your point and sound like you're whining. If you didn't get a promotion, it's because of that. It's just a very hard situation to get out of professionally. And because again, a lot of other bosses aren't going to want to take that on, or they're going to be like, oh, you're being a baby, you're being whatever. Like it's a very hard thing to fight.
Yeah, and I love that we're keeping it real here, because I could feed your audience lines and tell you all this, give you all this Mary Poppins. But the reality is quite different. You have to find out what's really going on. You have to get external advice. Sometimes, though, as to what we've been talking about, we can overreact to scenarios. That's why I said, are you really being bullied? Or are you, is just someone just being a bit of a nasty pasty in the workplace, and be really clear on it. And if it's a nasty pasty, then that's a whole other strategy, isn't it? And you can look up, I've done quite a few TV interviews on, toxic relationships at work and women on women and stuff. But that's a different strategy, isn't
Sure.
it? Which is not what we're talking about tonight. But figure out what it is first. That's kind of what I'm saying. And if it is true bullying, then the likelihood of you turning it around is quite slim. However, if it is simply a woman behaving badly, you can probably do something about it. So just figure out which one it is.
Makes sense. So, what if this is with friends or somebody in our circle? How do we handle that if we have somebody that we thought we were friends with that has that kind of behavior?
Hmm. Well, I'm always a big believer in backing yourself. I don't believe in ghosting. I think,
Hmm.
I have these psychologist friends, and I'm a corporate, not a therapist. But it's interesting. I've spoken to a lot of them, and they say, "Oh, we'll just walk away, cut the relationship off, and don't ever talk to them again." And ghosting is actually also a form of bullying.
Hmm.
Okay, because think about what you're doing. What are you actually doing? It's quite a toxic way of not handling a situation maturely, particularly with someone you've been friends with. If you've decided that this person fills you with dread and they are not behaving in a way that is aligned with your values, then have a conversation with them. Let them know, hey, Mary, here's how I've been feeling. I want to understand what's going on for you, and have the courageous conversation. And if you don't get the answer that suits you, make the decision to leave the friendship, but let her know. Do
Hmm.
the right thing. Say, hey, Mary, I don't feel that you and I are aligned anymore. I've loved the season of our friendship, but it's gone to a place that I'm not comfortable with anymore. So I wish you all the best, but I won't be able to continue this friendship the way it is right now. So, good luck. Have the conversation, leave the behavior you want to see. But we don't do that either. We just
Hmm.
walk.
Yep.
And most people, even in organizational life, they will exit an organization rather than have a tough conversation with someone. But let's try something different. Let's be brave where we can. Let's try and have those conversations, not with an expectation of an outcome, but see where it leads. Be curious, be kind, have the conversation. It could turn the friendship around, it could not, but at least do the right thing. You're responsible for the way you behave.
Mm.
And so make sure it's in a way that you can live with. That's what
I
I'd say.
love that so much. So, what do you hope women take from the Sisterhood Paradox when they read this book?
So I really would love women to understand, how when we support one another, when we work together, when we lift each other up, we've got actually more chance of creating a world where everybody gets a Guernsey. And that's not happening right now. So let's stop complaining about the things that we can't control from a gender equality perspective and take a good look in the mirror and control what we can, which is ourselves. And that's why I think the book is so powerful, because it's putting the power back into the hands of women, saying, hey girl, what are you doing? Are you behaving in a way that is actually promoting women, setting a direction, leading the way with courage and confidence, and creating workplaces where we all thrive? Or are you doing something else? And if you're doing something else, I'm not judging, but make a different decision for tomorrow. Because when we come together truly and honestly and authentically, we can do anything. And I think about, just as a last note, if your audience aren't aware, there's this extraordinary group of chimps called the bonobo chimps. Bonobo chimps are a chimp tribe, the closest in DNA to humans, 98.5% of their DNA with humans, who are run by a matriarchy. So it's run by female chimps. And instead of fighting, they make love, not war. And so I leave you with that concept. I think, what would happen if we made more love and not war with each other? What kind of place would the world be if we took a leaf out of the book of those gorgeous bonobos? Just a thought.
Love that. That's so great. Vanessa, thank you so much for being here. Where can people connect with you? And we'll of course connect your book on our show notes, but where's the best place to reach out to you?
Oh, thank you. Look, you can reach me via my website, vanessavershaw.com, but you can also pick up your copy of the book from Amazon. It is available in America. It says that there's no stock, but there is. There's loads of it. Don't know why they do that. And at any good retailers or bookstores as well. So, but all the information is on my website. So just reach out if you have any questions or you want to connect. I'm also on Instagram as well, although a bit more low key there.
Nice. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thanks so much, Betsy.
There's so much in this conversation, but one message really stayed with me. We cannot control every system, every workplace, or every person, but we can take a hard look at how we show up for other women. Are we opening doors, sharing opportunities, giving credit, including women in the room? Or are we competing, excluding, staying silent, or participating in behavior that makes it harder for another woman to succeed? And I also appreciated Vanessa's honesty that supporting women does not mean tolerating harmful behavior or pretending every woman is automatically a safe person simply because she's a woman. Real support requires awareness, courage, accountability, and sometimes hard conversations. The boys' club may be real, but women have an opportunity and a responsibility to build something stronger of our own. You can learn more about Vanessa and find her book, The Sisterhood Paradox, through the link in the show notes. And as always, lead louder, grow stronger, and don't do it alone.